Disney princesses are clearly changing and abandoning the stereotypes and dated tropes that were once associated with the concept.
Do animals talk to you?
No.
Were you poisoned?
No.
Sure, it's been a pretty slow change, but it's clear that it's happening. Disney princesses have long been a staple of the House of Mouse and a big part of their appeal to people across various demographics. However, Disney is starting to adjust how they handle and depict their leading ladies, and for good reason. This video is going to argue exactly how Disney is changing their princesses and why it's for the better. For generations, Disney princesses have catered to young girl audiences and made them lifelong supporters of the entertainment company. Seeing themselves represented meaningfully in film was enough to make girls across the globe fall in love with dozens or so characters that would fit this loose definition. However, even if Disney princesses served as representation for girls and young women in movies, they weren't necessarily good role models. A lot of the early Disney princess films center on their protagonists trying to get married or becoming cursed and then a prince having to save them. While the older movies are decidedly about them, the princesses are often depicted as domesticated and unempowered. This is especially true of the first 3 Disney princess movies, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. The princesses here are barely characters and are mainly defined by their appreciation and skill at doing housework and their shared desire to meet a man and get married.
There's nobody like him anywhere at all.
A part of their lack of personality stems from the centuries-old fables that these movies are based on. The folklore collected in works of the Brothers Grimm centered far more on creating interesting settings and interactions to spice up everyday peasant life than it did on exploring characters. However, this became a pretty noticeable issue when the Disney Princess brand started to take off. The original characters at the center of this campaign didn't have much character at all. And the things that did define them were stereotypes that reinforced household gender norms. Even as Disney princesses became more varied, independent, and fleshed out over time, these problematic tropes were still at the core of the brand. These issues were so well known that they were even addressed somewhat in the film Ralph Breaks the Internet. In this film, Sarah Silverman's Vanellope von Schweetz meets digital versions of all the previous Disney princesses. Here, they point out a lot of the tropes that have colored the idea of a Disney princess for decades.
Do you have daddy issues?
I don't even have a mom.
Neither do we!
Such as the princesses saying that people just assume that their lives are essentially perfect since they meet a man that they're romantically attracted to before the end of their film. Ralph Breaks the Internet then goes on to show these women as being more self-sufficient and have more agency than some had in their own original films. The company realized that they can no longer and maybe never should have depicted women as subservient and something to be protected. That's why Disney is slowly rolling back the idea of these characters being princesses. Instead, these are becoming, and maybe always should have been, heroines. Both within the recent films and the ancillary media surrounding them, Disney is changing their leading ladies from princesses to heroines. Although the difference between the two may be subtle and the concept of Disney princess is still far more popular, the change is meaningful. For instance, in the recent live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast, Emma Watson's Belle heavily pushes back on the idea of being a princess. Belle's entire character centers on being against the position society wants to put her in and living a life that she chooses. It's also implying that there's a difference between being a strong and capable woman and a princess. It's making it more clear that the two ideas are independent of one another and that it's not necessarily a good idea to conflate them, especially when the concept of a princess has a lot of historical baggage. Then there's the most recent leading lady in Disney's animated film, the titular Moana. This character isn't a Disney princess, despite filling a role similar in the movie to other female leads in other films. Disney has been very careful not to refer to Moana as a princess, and the voice actress portraying Moana, Ayuli Cravalho, describes the character as a heroine. It's clear that the gears are turning. Not only is Disney likely to continue referring to female leads as heroines instead of princesses, we're also sure to see these ladies fill different roles than similar characters did in previous Disney films. Nearly every Disney princess movie features the leading lady as a damsel in distress or a woman tasked with saving her community from an outside threat.
Aren't you a damsel in distress?
These are getting to be pretty tired storylines at this point, even if they can still inspire kids around the world. Moving away from the idea that female protagonists in Disney animated films need to be princesses would free up the company to tell new and original stories. Heroines are free to challenge these ideas and star in films with any kind of theme. They're also not bogged down by traditional ideas of what a princess is, and can be more interesting and active characters in their stories. The shift from Disney princesses to heroines has already started in the world of Disney films. The leading ladies in the movies today are almost unrecognizable to the protagonists who started the idea of a Disney princess. It's clear that there is a deliberate effort to change princesses into heroines. The most obvious of the differences between new and old female leads in Disney movies is that the women protagonists now have far more agency. Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora are all kind of passengers in their own stories. Their actions have little to no impact on the events of the story, and they're usually saved a number of times by other characters. At the end of her film, Snow White is revived by a random prince, and the evil queen who cursed her only falls because of the efforts of the seven dwarfs. Slowly but surely, this helplessness went away, and these leading ladies began to have more of an impact on their own stories. Ariel from The Little Mermaid is at least responsible for the majority of the events in her film. Belle in the original Beauty and the Beast is defined by her non-conforming nature, and the titular Pocahontas stopped a war that would have caused untold destruction. More recent Disney films have portrayed their leading ladies as the overt heroines of the film, with their actions directly leading to the defeat of a movie's antagonist. In Brave, Merida is the overt hero of the film, and her actions save her clan from ruin. In Frozen, Anna and Elsa are able to protect their kingdom by growing closer and helping the other overcome their insecurities. It's incredibly fitting that Disney is rebranding these kinds of characters as heroines, as they are the heroes of their story. They're not the same as the original princesses who had to be saved in their film. They're the ones doing the saving now. As the difference between the new and old female protagonists becomes more distinct, it's difficult to keep putting them in the same category, especially as their motivations change. Now that the leading ladies in Disney animated movies have some agency, it's clear that the goals they pursue are changing. Even as Disney movies started letting their female protagonists do more within the story of any given movie, a lot of their actions were based on wanting to end up with a man. Ariel from The Little Mermaid triggers most of the events of the movie because she really wants to be with Prince Eric. In Aladdin, Jasmine ends up with Aladdin because he represents and can even provide the freedom that she desperately wants. Needless to say, while it's great that Disney heroines have more to do in their movies, it's not great that most of them just want to find a guy and settle down like the original princesses. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with wanting to be in a relationship and start a family, but there is an issue with this character trait connecting role models for young girls. A happy ending for girls doesn't have to involve entering a relationship, and girls should be taught that they can achieve their goals without a guy around helping them. That's why more recent Disney heroines don't end up in explicit relationships at the end of their films, or even have the idea of a relationship as a primary motivator.
You can't marry a man you just met.
Brave specifically frames the idea that Merida needs to be in a relationship for the good of her community and her own happiness as a bad thing. Frozen also depicts Elsa as being uninterested in a romantic relationship, and Anna as learning that she doesn't need to be in a romantic relationship to feel loved and appreciated. Moana is also entirely lacking in romantic themes, and instead focuses on a young woman's journey of gaining confidence to save her loved ones. The heroines of these films don't need to be in a relationship by the end of their movie to be happy. Some of the movies even go out of their way to say that even implying that romantic partnership is necessary for happiness is a fundamentally bad and inaccurate idea.
And I'll be shooting for my own hand!
Disney princesses are clearly changing and abandoning the stereotypes and dated tropes that are associated with the concept. Sure, it's been a pretty slow change, but it's clear that it's happening. These kinds of characters are closer to heroines today than anything else. The terminology used to refer to this group of characters is even starting to reflect this. Within the context of their movies, Disney princesses also have far more agency now than ever before. Some of the most recent films starring Disney heroines even allow the leading ladies to save the day without the help of a man that they end up marrying. Disney is modernizing the idea of Disney princesses, and that's pretty great for everyone. What do you think of how Disney is changing their princesses? Please let us know in the comment section down below. While you're there, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to The Binger, and click that bell icon so you can catch all of our upcoming videos.